What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Slate. This is the Matt and Matt show. We're gonna talk some baseball. I guess this is gonna be a regular thing going forward, where the two of us are here to break down all things baseball, DFS, sports betting, whatever there is on tap. Tuesdays tend to be pretty big slates. Almost every team playing. We've got a couple games that are on the slate, and then we've got a 12 gamer to follow that. So, where do you want to start, Lamarca? And also, welcome. Yeah, let's get into some baseball. I know this is gonna be a fun summer for us doing this.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I got called up to the big leagues for Tuesday. Very excited about it. Excited to be working with a fellow Matt. And I think both of these 640 games tonight are interesting, right? They're providing some betting opportunities, in my opinion. You've got the Mets at the Reds. The big news there being the return of Max Scherzer. And then you've got the Angels at the Marlins and Sandy Alcantara on the hill for Miami. He's been arguably the best pitcher in baseball this season. So in that first game, I kind of like under 9 runs. I feel like 9 runs in a Max Scherzer start is probably a historical outlier. I can't imagine he's pitched in a ton of games with a total that high. I get that the Reds are an absolute disaster from a pitching perspective. Their ERA for their starters and their relievers both over 5. But this Mets offense has been struggling a bit recently. They did get 7 runs yesterday, but they were at 4 or fewer in 6 prior games. So I think under 9 runs makes some sense. And then I'm always interested in backing Sandy. I still don't think he's being priced like a true ace pitcher, which he has proven to be. And my favorite bet in this contest, if you go over to pitcher props, you can bet on Alcantara to get the win at plus 135. So the Marlins are 145 on the money line, but Alcantara plus 135 to get the win. It's obviously a little bit of a riskier wager, but this guy is routinely going 7, 8, 9 innings. I think that if the Marlins win this game, the odds of Sandy factoring into the decision are also going to be pretty high. So I like getting that extra value by betting for him to get the win as opposed to the team to get the win.
All right, we're going to start with some agreement and some disagreement, because I do like where your head's at with the Alcantara bet. I haven't really dove into the pitcher to record a win betting markets this year, but I do think, like there can be some value when you have pitchers who are, the team is so dependent on them being good for them to win. Like Alcantara is pitching probably as deep into games as anyone in baseball this year. Like Zach Wheeler is not getting worked the same way he was last year. He's maybe the first guy that comes to mind of like massive pitch counts. I think that guy this year really is Alcantara. And I'm not a Noah Syndergaard fan, so I kind of like this one. I actually don't think Alcantara is as good as he's pitched. His strikeout rate is a little underwhelming compared to some other aces. So I do think he's like a lower end ace. I don't necessarily think that he deserves to be the Cy Young favorite, but all of that is still, like, you put that aside, like I still kind of like this bet. But I do have an issue with totals in Cincinnati, just in general. That stadium is really weird because for whatever reason, you tend to get a lot of variance with that park. One, because it's a hitter's park and it's specifically good for homers, but it also is a park that, for whatever reason, maybe it's a batter's eye thing. I don't really know what it is, but there tends to be a lot of strikeouts there too, like more than other stadiums. This is like not a thing we normally talk about is strikeouts as a park factor thing, but you can get like a big range of outcomes. So like I could see Scherzer having 10 Ks and giving up 3 homers. Nick Lodolo, honestly, I don't know that much about him, but like still the Mets in a hitter's park against a guy who I think is probably below average, like also potentially a really good spot. So like if this game had 4 runs, I wouldn't be surprised. If it had 14 runs, I wouldn't be surprised. So I don't necessarily disagree with the pick. It's just like there are certain situations where I think there's almost too much uncertainty. Like I tend to be on the safe side and like not want to go for, I guess, pitchers in their first start off the injury list too. Scherzer not having pitched in a while also concerns me. So I actually lean towards the Reds money line. I think it's too big of a number. Maybe Scherzer being a little rusty is part of that. I also think, like, even though Joey Votto's out, Brandon Drury's been playing, Tommy Pham's been playing, Jonathan India and Tyler Naquin's back. The Reds have had a lot of injuries this year. They're getting a little healthier. So I don't think I agree or disagree with you on the total. I'm kind of just, unsure, but I do think the Reds are not getting quite enough respect on the money line.
Yeah, I don't hate that call. I backed the Reds yesterday for my best bets article with Hunter Green on the mound. And Lodolo is another guy with a good pedigree. He's roughly a top 50 prospect entering this year, coming off the 60-day IL. So this is probably a start where they ease him back in. You probably see more of the Reds bullpen than usual, which is certainly not a good thing. They are the worst bullpen in the league by a long shot. So I hear you. There does feel like a wide range of outcomes in this game. I'm just kind of riding it's a Scherzer game and there's a 9-run total. And I'm not all that confident in the Mets offense on a night-to-night basis.
No, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, it's weird. Like, I don't know how I feel about the Mets offense. I feel like last year I was routinely higher on the Mets offense than most people. And the Mets just seem to be really streaky. So, like, I feel like they're a good offense overall.
They're a weird team. They're a weird team. They've gotten a lot of hits with 2 outs, 2 strikes, but there's not a lot of power. Outside of Pete Alonso, they're really not hitting home runs. They've started to heat up a little bit. Playing in Cincinnati will probably help that factor. But they're a team that I kind of feel like is due for some regression, and that hurts. I am a Mets fan, so I try to keep a realistic approach with them.
Yeah, I mean, how much can we count on like Thomas Nido and Luis Guillorme to drive in 2 runners, get up with the bases loaded and routinely get hits? Like, these are not really good offensive players. So yeah, maybe there's some regression coming, but I also think like Lindor and Marte and obviously Pete Alonso are great. I don't even want to like go to divisions. Maybe we'll come back to that, but like, I kind of feel like everything is priced pretty fairly. I thought I'd be a little more excited to talk about some of those, but the odds have changed a bunch. So the Mets are rightfully, decent sized favorites. They're in the they've hovered in the -150 to -200 range with a few game lead for like a couple weeks now. So that seems about right. All right, let's go to some other games. Are there any other money line total, any bets overall from any of these other games before we get into DFS? Like, where else are you looking betting wise?
Well, I know we talked before we got on the air, stolen bases against Noah Syndergaard.
Let's look at this.
You can definitely find some value by targeting the Mariners to run. Noah Syndergaard has never been able to hold bases. He's getting run all over once again this year. So, full credit to you. You brought that up. You said stolen base props have become like one of your favorite things to target. And this seems like a particularly good spot to look at the fish.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like, a lot of these odds have moved, and also the 2 best base stealers on the Marlins are not playing, Jazz Chisholm and John Birdie. Birdie was like +110 this morning to steal a base in this game, which I think is the lowest line that anyone's had all year. Maybe lowest I've ever seen, because I think he's leading the league in steals, and it's the easiest guy to run on in baseball. But yeah, he's not in the lineup, so that one's not going to matter. But I do think Joey Wendell at +320, Brian Anderson +1100. Like, I think those guys are somewhat interesting. Like Miguel Rojas was in the 700s this morning. It's come down to 550. I don't know if that's still I think that's okay, but it's not quite as appealing anymore. I think the opportunities against Syndergaard tend to be better when it's a team that doesn't run that much. So you get guys that normally don't steal a lot of bases. You could get them as like a long shot. And because it's him, it's actually a good opportunity. Like, guys who don't run will run frequently against him. And there's a couple other pitchers that fit that mold, like Dylan Cease, Mike Clevenger, Sandy Alcantara too, on the other side of this game, actually, I think is undervalued in his ability to give up steals. Like, I think Ohtani to steal a base at +650 is actually the best bet that we're looking at right here. Ohtani's had some crazy odds for steals this year. He's just not running as much as last year. But I think a big part of that is just the synergy between him and Trout has created some weirdness. So, like, if Trout is intentionally walked ahead of Ohtani, and then Ohtani walks, Trout's just moving to second. Like, there's no room for him to go. Alcantara is a better pitcher than most, which means Trout is going to be on base less often. So I think that clears some space for Ohtani, if that makes any sense. So yeah, like I'm not as worried about that as I am in a typical game. But like as someone who has bet Ohtani steals props a lot this year, I feel like every time Ohtani gets on, Trout is already on, and then there's nowhere for him to go. They're not going to double steal Trout to third and Ohtani to second. Trout doesn't.
Right.
You can't risk injury to Trout having him steal bases. I think that's like the main reason. He is pretty fast. So I actually like Shohei more than the Marlins guys, but I do think there's a lot of opportunity in this game. But all right, so there's actually one other game. Yeah, I'll just give one more steals prop. Well, we'll see if the number is moved, but I think O'Neal Cruz is in a pretty good spot too. He was in the 900s. And then we could talk about this game overall because I do think this one's interesting. But yeah, plus 900 for O'Neal Cruz batting in the middle of the lineup. Like Tyone, I think is due for some regression. Like I actually like the Pirates to win this game also at plus 160, but O'Neal Cruz plus 900. Like that's my two bets here. Like I know people like same game parlays. Maybe you combine those two things. I'm not necessarily suggesting that, but I do have two bets that I like from this game: Cruz to steal a base and the Pirates to win. The Pirates are getting some decent hitters back. Like Yoshi Sasugo is playing, Jack Sawinski is moving up in the lineup, Ben Gamel's back. Like this is a decent version of the Pirates with Reynolds and Hayes and Cruz. They're all in the lineup. And Tyone has not been that good lately. So yeah, now I'm picking my second big underdog in a row, and it might sound like I just have a New York bias. I'm actually in Hoboken, New Jersey right now. Like I grew up with these two teams, but I'm picking against both the Yankees and the Mets tonight.
Yeah, it's interesting, to see. It'll be interesting to see how Quintana fares because the Yankees are not a team that you typically want to target with left-handed pitching. They've got a ton of righty bats that just absolutely mash in that split. But Quintana has been like kind of okay this year, especially from a StatCast perspective. He's 88th percentile in exit velocity against him. So maybe he can keep the Yankees bats somewhat quiet. Obviously, this is a big park downgrade for the Yankees going from, their small ballpark in the Bronx to Pittsburgh. So I can get behind that. I wasn't really considering the Pirates just because I'm about as high as you can get on the Yankees. I think they're the best team in the league by a wide margin. But yeah, maybe plus 160 is a little bit too much.
Yeah, I think the Yankees are arguably the best team in the league also, but I think if anyone on the Yankees is overrated, it's Jameson Taillon. Like I think Cole might even be underrated. And Cortez has obviously had an insane surge this year compared to what he was in the past. But yeah, I just think like the nature of the Pirates lineup today, it's just better. It's a better lineup. Like they've got all these young players coming up and playing well. They're not going to be a bad team for that much longer. Like it might be 2-3 years down the line, but with a decent pitcher on the mound in Quintana, like they are not as good as the Yankees, but it's a lot to give them at home. But I actually do like I'm not just going to pick all these long shot underdogs. I think the Phillies at minus 165 are pretty dramatically undervalued too, because Juan Soto's not in the lineup. And I don't know a ton about Christopher Sanchez. Maybe you do, but I think he's probably at least as good as Paolo Espino. And the margin that the Phillies offense has over the Nationals without Soto playing, like I don't really understand why this line is so low. So you can go run line here or money line, but I think this is a really good spot for the Phillies.
Yeah, Sanchez has a 3.52 xERA this year. Most of that is out of the bullpen. But in AAA, he's made a handful of starts. He's got a 2.25 ERA. So yeah, I'm with you. I think that that's probably I would lean towards the run line. I don't ever want to lay the minus 165 for the most part, but I do hear you that, value is value, right? I preach that all the time, that just because something is a favorite at minus 165 doesn't mean it's not a good number. So perhaps
you're talking to someone whose biggest bet of future bet of the baseball season this year is Astros minus 700 to win the division like a few weeks ago. I know it's a stupid number to lay. It seems like they're going to win.
Right. Of course. Yep. No, it's like betting against the safety in the Super Bowl, right? Yeah. It's just mathematically, it makes the correct play.
Yeah. So yeah, it feels weird sometimes to do that. And then if it loses, you feel pretty dumb. And I've had that. I've actually had it more with the Phillies than any other team this year, where I've bet them as a favorite and they haven't won. I think they've really just underachieved this year. But Bryce Harper being out is not as big of a deal as Juan Soto. He's the whole Nationals offense. So he may pinch hit at some point. He did yesterday also. But even if you're getting one Soto plate appearance instead of 4, like that's a massive drop off. So yeah, I do think this is a good spot for them. But the only other game I like is way down on the West Coast. So I'll give you a chance to like cover some other, if there's any other games that stand out to you before I get all the way down to the West Coast games.
Yeah, the other game I wrote about today was the Cubs at plus 115. Strictly targeting Jason Alexander for the Brewers. His numbers this year are pretty horrendous. He's survived, right? His ERA is actually 3.82 across roughly 31 innings, but he's striking out less than 4.5 batters per 9 innings. He's walking nearly 4 batters per 9 innings. His xERA is up over 6. And this Cubs offense has quietly been pretty darn good of late. They are 4th in WRC plus against right-handers over the past 14 days. So I think this is a decent spot to get them as slight underdogs. I don't love Kyle Hendricks facing the Brewers. So maybe the better play is even to just grab over 9 runs if you feel like this is going to be a offensive type of matchup. But the plus 115 is intriguing enough to me that I will take a shot with the Cubs.
Yeah, this one hits a little close to home because I was on the Cubs yesterday and they took the lead in the 9th on a Seiya Suzuki inside the park homer and then blew it and then ended up losing in the 10th inning. It was a painful one to watch. I think I'd be 100% with you. The Cubs don't have Wilson Contreras in the lineup tonight, and they don't have Christopher Morel, who I'm not sure how much that matters, but a little bit of a watered down lineup. But I still think there's something to be said for that because, yeah, I do think the Cubs kind of have the pitching edge here. The Brewers' offense is not that great. Like, they're a good team mostly because of pitching, like especially their bullpen. So when you get one of their weaker starters in, and then Williams and Hader both pitched yesterday, and I think it may actually be true that Hader has pitched 2 consecutive games coming into this one. If that's true, even if it's only 1, we won't see him tonight. Like, he rarely pitches 2 in a row. He never pitches 3 in a row. So highly unlikely Hader's available. I think that just adds more to what you're saying with the Cubs being.
Yeah, that's a great call. He has pitched 2 days in a row.
It is 2 days in a row. Okay, so yeah, 0% chance he's pitching tonight. Like, they'll go to a position player before pitching Hader again. I think that's like, if this game is in the 17th inning, I know that doesn't really happen with the runner starting on second, but like if it somehow makes it that far, I still think they'd go to a position player before they go to Hader. Like, you're not going to burn his arm out in the middle of, in the beginning of July.
Right.
Okay. The other game I really like, and I actually, I think I've scrolled too far now. I actually had the A's at over plus 200 last night. I'm going right back to it. Like, you win a bet with that long of odds, I think you just have to repeat it. Maybe you can tell me something about Adrian Martinez. My understanding, he's just like an average minor leaguer who is probably slightly below average MLB pitcher. But the Blue Jays offense, I think I've been pretty consistent that they're kind of overrated just because the back half of the lineup is not very good. Like, once you get past Alejandro Kirk in the 5 spot, whatever, Tasker, Kirk, like Vlad, and then those 2 guys, there's a massive drop off. So I don't love this lineup. And I don't think Yusei Kikuchi is particularly good. The A's actually have a decent amount of like right-handed power. So I think this is too much. It's giving the A's too much at plus 155. Like, to me, this is close to a pick'em game. Like, this is probably my favorite bet tonight.
I like that call. Yeah, Martinez he's like a nothing prospect. He's been really mediocre to start the year, 6.3 ERA in his 2 starts, but you're not backing him, right? You're backing the number here against a Blue Jays team that has been overvalued basically all season. And they've been pretty good, but I do think they have been slightly disappointing from an offensive perspective. So I've been touting Blue Jays unders basically since that number came out in the off season. So I'm with you. I like that call.
All right, so we're on the same page with at least it sounds like a couple of these, which is always nice. If both of us know our baseball and we're agreeing, then yeah, that's pretty good for everybody who's taken our advice. All right, you think let's move to DFS? We've done enough on the sportsbook over here.
Let's do it.
All right, so I have the player pool up with I don't have the screen share here. You know what? Let me add this to the screen share. Might as well let everyone see it. But just to tease it, like the pitching pool is so strange tonight. Like the group of players that are the most expensive pitchers is rather insane. Like we've got Nick Pivetta and Jamison Tyone in 5 figures, and Ryan Pepio, Jeff Springs, Luis Garcia, I do think is a good play tonight. But like, how do you handle this when there's basically no aces pitching tonight? The ones that we do have, Scherzer and Alcantara, are not even on the slate.
Right. Yeah, it's a night where I think that Luis Garcia is going to be heavy chalk. Approaching 50% ownership, probably even a little bit higher in some of the higher stake stuff. So I think it's a good spot for him, right? You're taking on the Royals. They're not a team that whiffs a ton, but they struggle to put runs on the scoreboard. So I think Garcia ends up being the top guy here, but he's not the type of pitcher that I want to play when he is going to be this heavily owned. I'll take some shots with some of these other guys. Springs has been so good. He gets a brutal matchup here against the Red Sox, but his strikeout upside, I think, makes him an interesting pivot. You could go to somebody like Michael Kopech, who the strikeouts haven't really been there for him this year, but he's been keeping runs off the board. Another guy with a tough matchup, though. So I think I'm willing to spread my ownership a little bit more among this top tier than just focus in on Garcia.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And like, if you are playing Garcia in a GPP, you're probably going to need to find a way to get contrarian elsewhere. Like a Garcia Kikuchi combo. Kikuchi's only 7,800. He's facing the A's. Like that's going to be appealing to people. And even though he's had an inconsistent year, he's coming off a game where he just had 28.5 fantasy points. Like that's going to stand out to people. So yeah, I mean, you look back at some of these other games, like he's averaging like 3 fantasy points a start over the last month. Prior to that last game, like his June was very strange. So I'm still not buying that he's that good, but given the matchup, given how weak this pitching slate is, I do think you'll see a lot of Garcia Kikuchi pairings out there. So I'm definitely with you that I prefer, like if there's a chalk pitcher to play, it's Garcia. But maybe you just go down to the guy I mentioned before, Christopher Sanchez, who is the cheapest pitcher on the slate and now facing Nationals offense without Juan Soto. Like that, I think if I'm going to play Garcia, I'm going to save some money with Sanchez with him or someone like that, and then pay up for a stack that other people aren't paying up for. Because if we look at the Guardians, they're just so affordable, and they're facing Drew Hutchinson. Like this is who people are playing, right? Like this is the stack that everyone's going to be on.
Yes, I think that the Guardians will be one of the more popular offenses, the most popular offense for sure. You'll have some other teams, there's always people that are going to play the Yankees and the Dodgers, but when you factor in the prices, it's definitely Cleveland. I think that stands out the most today.
Yeah, I think the Dodgers and the Yankees might even be a little lower just because of the Phillies spot too. I think I'm just double checking this. Yeah, they're not super expensive either. Like Castellanos 3,800. And then Bowman. I don't know much about Derek Hall, but he definitely seems to have some power. And he's
basically every time he hits the ball, it's a homer or a broken bat single. That's about it.
He doesn't hit the ball often. Is that what you're getting at?
Yes.
But even if you want to just play Rhys Hoskins at first instead, like that's only 4,300. I think a lot of people are doing that. So, maybe the Yankees and Dodgers are more interesting because of that. They don't have the best matchups. Like the Yankees are away from Yankee Stadium, like we talked about. Jose Quintana is league average probably. And then the Dodgers are facing German Marquez. So, and it's not Coors at least. So like, that's an okay matchup. You talked about Springs, and I kind of feel like I do agree Springs has upside, but I also think the Red Sox are going to get overlooked to a decent extent.
Sure.
Because if you look at these prices, like it's not as appealing as some of the teams we just mentioned. They're more expensive than teams that are in better spots, but like it's Fenway. The Red Sox still have a lot of power. Like I think there's a lot of upside for them. And then just to give another team that you mentioned, the opposing pitcher, like I agree also that there's a lot of upside for Michael Kopech. I do. Like I think you can justify playing him, but when Kopech's bad, like he's bad.
Yep.
He's a high strikeout and high walk guy, and like is somewhat susceptible to the long ball. So like if some of your lineups you want to have Kopech and others you want to stack the Twins, who again, like I think are a little overpriced, and for that reason, not as many people play them. So I think my favorite two stacks, honestly, are probably the Twins and the Red Sox, just because like they're going to get overlooked because of the pricing dynamics.
That's a fair point. I think I do that quite often where I'll use a pitcher and I'll also stack against him.
Yeah.
I really like the Giants tonight offensively. We kind of talked about a ballpark downgrade for the Yankees. The Giants get a nice upgrade going to Arizona. They're another team that is slightly on the cheaper side. And we're still waiting for their lineup. So their ownership could be kept down a bit just by that fact, right? People like to get their lineups in early. So those that are still waiting for the Giants lineup, like you have to wait.
Yeah. One thing we probably do know is that Austin Slater and Wilmer Flores are going to be hitting first and second, unless one of them just had an injury pop up, because those are their best hitters versus lefties. Yeah, those guys will be at the top. They just batted at the top against Madison Bumgarner yesterday. But beyond that, yes, we don't really know. Like, will Brandon Bell play? I have no idea.
Right. Likely Darren Ruff is in there with a premium spot too at 3,100. So you can work some of these things in. But yeah, like I think it's a cheap matchup. They're implied for over 5 runs. Park upgrade, like all the things that you're looking for with San Francisco, they kind of check those boxes today.
Yeah, well, these prices are nuts. Like, I think in cash games, you can play Slater and Ruff. Those might be the best outfielder and the best first baseman for cash games tonight. Maybe there's some Guardians guys that look a little better, but they're up there. Yeah, part of me thinks the Giants are going to be popular for the reasons you said. And then the other part is like, what if we don't get the lineup till after lock? And people, those green check marks are comforting to people. And we're an hour and 20 minutes out and there's no Giants lineup yet. So like they could lose some steam ownership wise because the lineup's not confirmed. And then, yeah, like if there's some surprises, like Yermin Mercedes, we don't know if he's going to be in the lineup, but he's also, I mean, look how cheap these guys are. Like we're talking low 3,000s for the top of the lineup hitters. So yeah, I do think this is pretty appealing, and it'll be interesting to see like when we actually get this lineup.
Yeah. And I'm not saying they're going to like completely fly under the radar, but compared to the other top offenses, I do think we'll get a little bit of an ownership discount.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like they will not be the tier of the Guardians in terms of how much people are playing them. I do want to go to, I guess I've sort of teased this already because I like this spot for the A's, but as far as leverage stacks go, like, is there a better one than Oakland? Like, I don't really want to stack the Royals against Luis Garcia.
Right.
I think if you're in massive tournaments, like you can justify that a little bit, but I legitimately think the A's are in a good spot against Kikuchi, and no one's playing the A's. No one ever plays the A's.
Yep.
And like the Sean Murphy and Ramon Laureano and Nick Allen is now batting first. Like, look at this Nick Allen price. 2,200, you play him at second or short. And I still like, yeah, that's a great value play, but there's going to be, Ahmed Rosario at short is going to be way more popular. I'm sure there's a bunch of second basemen too. Yeah, I really like Oakland tonight. All things Oakland. I think they're going to do it again and beat Toronto. Kikuchi does have decent strikeout upside, but like if he's bad, this could be a big spot for the A's.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times this year I end up on Oakland as the top leverage stack just because the pitcher that's facing them is always overowned.
Did you have them against Tyone too? Because it started well and then they just like fizzled out.
Tyone, not so much, but Kikuchi, sure. I will definitely be happy to fade Yusei Kikuchi. And not so much tonight because I don't think people are rushing to play Cal Quantrill, but the Tigers are another team that fit that description for me of, a team that I'm routinely looking to get some ownership leverage on. And you want to talk about a cheap team.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Eric Haas is 4K, but other than that, everyone on the team is priced below 3.
Yeah. So I was kind of talking about like playing an expensive pitcher, but with a really cheap one to get up to like the Red Sox and Twins, because that'll be contrarian. What I also think will be contrarian is playing 2 expensive pitchers and then going all the way down to Detroit and Oakland, because you don't need the savings tonight. Like you don't need to play Ryan Pepio for, $9,900. Like no one's doing that. So I think it's this weird thing where sometimes because a team is so cheap, they're actually contrarian because if you make lineups with them, you're only spending like 45K out of the 50K of the salary cap. Like the Tigers, these prices are wild. I mean, Torkelson and Candelario are the flat minimum. And then you have, it's almost the entire lineup is under $3,000. The only guy, Eric Haas is the only guy. This is, I mean, you're saying it and I'm like hearing, but now I'm thinking out loud again. It's like, what is going on here? Because this is not a bad spot. I don't think Cal Quantrill is really that good at all.
No, he's not. He's not. And Riley Green, leadoff hitter. I mean, I think that's a guy that probably should be not popular, but like he's a guy that people should be considering because he's 2,500 and he's hitting leadoff. But no one is going to be stacking around Riley Green.
No, I think like you may see some of these guys pop up in cash game lineups or cash style line, like people are just running optimizers. Green is 2,500 in the leadoff spot. It's a decent matchup. Like people may play him, but just to like understand why they probably won't, if you just look at the Guardians again, like it's so much better of a matchup for them. And Jose Ramirez isn't even 5K. And then they've got like Steven Kwan's 3,600. Like, yes, the Tigers and A's are very appealing, but you have the Guardians right there. And I mean, how bad is Drew Hutchinson really? Like, he was never that good, but where's he at in his career right now?
He's not in a good place. I'll tell you that much. He's basically bottom 10 percentile in every pitching metric, StatCast or otherwise. He's only 28th percentile in barrel rate. So there you go. That's basically his best metric at this point.
Yeah, I'm just gonna pull up a game log here. He's maybe not bad enough where like you have to play Cleveland, but he's almost that. Like these are some wild fantasy point totals. I guess.
Yeah, I mean a lot of that's out of the bullpen.
Yeah, some of them, but like 4 2/3 innings, 3 points, 4 innings. Like his last 2 starts, he's gone 8+ innings and had less than 3 fantasy points both times. And then, he was a reliever. And then before that, we had a couple starts. But the Tigers bullpen isn't very good either, right? Like maybe at the back end, they have a couple big arms, but the Tigers don't strike me as a team with like, I don't know the names well enough to say like specifically like this 5th, 6th, and 7th inning guy is bad. But having seen what happens to the Tigers after their starters leave the game, like my instinct is that at least before the 8th and 9th inning, because like Alex Lang has been really good. And I think Gregory Soto has been good. Don't hold me to that, but I think those are their.
No, the Tigers are actually 3rd in bullpen ERA this year. So
but it's coming from their high leverage guys, right? Like
exactly. But if you're looking for a reason to be like a little bit tempered on Cleveland, that's it. Right. If you're saying we're only going to get 4 innings out of Hutchinson, if he can just keep the fire, from erupting, the Detroit bullpen should be able to at least keep them at bay if this game doesn't get out of hand early.
Yeah, I like that. So if he happens to hold it together for 4 or 5 innings and the Tigers are close or have a lead, like then you bring in the better relievers. Because if Hutchinson is kind of bad and it's 4-0 Cleveland after the 4th inning, and then you get the weaker portion of relievers coming in, that's not going to look good. But if it's like 1-0 Detroit and somehow he's held it together, then like you get the better quality relievers and then Cleveland ends up being a bust. So yeah, some people might say like, oh, it's the best projecting team. It's a big slate. Like, don't worry about ownership because it's such a big slate. Like I tend to disagree with that because the other thing you get on a big slate is like people don't play the Twins. People don't play the Red Sox. A lot of people, I think some people play the Dodgers and Yankees, but like the White Sox will be overlooked. The Braves, we haven't talked about them at all. Like there's a lot of good offenses. The Astros too, like that no one's really playing. The Astros are facing Zach Greinke, right? So, I mean, you don't have to play Cleveland. You can just play. There's many other good choices on this one.
Right.
All right. I guess we've got a few minutes. What else should we get to? Should we go back to Sportsbook? I'll leave it up to you. What else do we need to cover?
Well, I think if we're talking about playing some of these really cheap teams, right? Are you pairing Garcia with Pepio? Are you pairing him? I know you don't like Tyone. Are you going with Nick Pivetta? Like, who's the secondary stud arm that people should be considering if they're using a Tiger stack?
I think it's Alex Wood. He's been somewhat underwhelming, but I think like he just had this one really terrible start against the Braves, and that was actually probably the start this year where I had the most exposure to him. Was that start against the Braves where he had negative 12.5 points. So that was fun. But aside from that, like he's actually been pretty reliable. He had a couple 20+ point games. His strikeout rate is not that high, which is probably why people don't really want to use him. Going into Arizona is not a great matchup, but like I think we have a decent pitcher in a decent spot. And that's more than what you can say for a lot of these other guys. Like he's a little bit cheaper than Pivetta and Tyone. I guess I think Wood will be a little more contrarian than these guys too. So I'm almost like reluctantly picking him. Really though, there's no one else I'm excited about. I think you do just bite the bullet and play chalky Luis Garcia. But beyond that, like I don't maybe I think almost no one's going to play Ian Anderson too, but that's not really the answer to your question, right? Because he's a little cheaper, and that's not what you do to play a Tigers or A's stack. But I do kind of like Ian Anderson here also. Like none of this is very exciting. If you want to like go full blown leverage play, I mean, I guess you could just throw Drew Hutchinson in your lineup at 6K. I'm not doing that. So I guess what's becoming evident from me talking about this is there really are not great choices. Maybe you have one you're more confident in at least.
I kind of like Pepiot. Okay. His MLB results have not been great. He's made 3 starts. He's pitched 11.1 innings, but they've stretched him out a little bit in the minors. He's gone, 5-6 innings in his last few minor league starts. And he is a pretty good strikeout arm. He's got a 12.29 K9 in the minors, and he's 10.32 in the major leagues. The Rockies offense against right-handed pitchers on the road, certainly not a unit that we need to fear. So typically when you roster a guy who's nearing 10K, you don't want his ceiling to be like 6 innings and 8 strikeouts, but I think that might be enough given the other pitchers that are around him on this slate.
Yeah, I think that almost certainly would be enough. Like, I'll ask you this. How many pitchers top 20 points tonight? Because if he does that, he might be the highest scoring guy.
Yeah, I'm going to say like 3. There's always someone that comes up and surprises us. Maybe it's Pepiot. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I think every single pitcher starting is less than 50% chance of reaching 20.
Yes.
Yeah, on the individual level, but some of them will get there. There's going to be an outlier. There's going to be a weird game from someone.
Right.
I think like I
have only one pitcher right now with a median projection above 15. So that just
Luis Garcia is the only guy. Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like we've got a ton of pitchers who should be in the 12 to 15 point range. This is one of them for sure. But yeah, this is an unusual slate. Like we basically got every team's number 5 starter at the same time. Red Sox fans
except for the teams that are playing at 640.
Right. Except for, yeah, I guess that's what makes it like usually there's an ace somewhere, but they're not on the slate. Red Sox fans will tell you that Nick Pivetta is much better than that. I don't see it.
I mean, he has been, but I'm not believing it, I guess is how I'll say it.
Yeah. Like the strikeouts, he's had a couple really big strikeout games, but like you can't just throw out all of the low strikeout games. Like the full package is probably a semi-decent pitcher. And Tampa gets a pretty decent sized park upgrade going into Boston from Tampa, and Wander Franco's back. So like, this is it's not a terrible Rays lineup. It's just like if Pivetta were 8K, I think everyone would be on him. At this price though, like if you're playing him, you better hope he's contrarian because this is like way more than he normally costs. Although looking at this now, like he's been in the 9,000s 3 consecutive starts. But then you go back to the beginning of the year, like this is a guy who was priced 7K at the beginning. In April, we were looking at prices in the 7s, and it even dipped to 6,700 in May. So like, I don't know. You have to really buy Nick Pivetta's season to like him at this price.
Yeah, I mean, I'll certainly have some tonight just because again, it's such a bad pitching slate. But on a normal slate, right, we would certainly not be
Yeah.
all that excited to play Pavetta at 10-3.
Yeah, I think that is perfectly reasonable. So I don't know. I'll just give another quick scan here, but like, I wish I had, the last time that I did a show, I was able to tout Patrick Corbin, my new favorite player, who I thought would, be good for like 15 fantasy points. He went for like 40. I have no one like that today. So, I like to be able to have some kind of bold take, but I'm not going to force it. Like, there just isn't a guy. And it sounds like you certainly don't have one either. We do have them on offense a little bit with the Tigers and A's, but that's really about it.
Yeah, my guy is Pepiot, the 10K guy, the 10K
Okay.
under the radar play.
Like scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you? Just pure emotion, like 1 to 10, how excited are you to have him in your lineup?
Oh,
so we can gauge it.
A 3.5. I'm going to say a 3.5.
Okay. All right. This is how we're going to, I think going forward, we'll use this metric to let people understand just how we're feeling so that the emotions can match the words. All right. I think that's going to do it for us. We have Madden next. It's going to be the Vikings and the Patriots. I'm looking at city names and I'm like, it hasn't been football in so long. Like I almost messed that up, but it is the Vikings and the Patriots. Enjoy Madden for those of you sticking around for it. And thanks to LaMarca. Hopefully we gave you guys some good baseball info, and until next time, see you all later.